Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religion. And today, our privilege, BigZebra.com. Please do check out BigZebra.com for an interesting view of factual items. Is that accurate enough?
Yes, or as factual as I can get.
Right.
Thank you very much. I have an interesting topic. At
Go
least
ahead,
I
sir.
think it's interesting, but your mileage may vary. See, the thing is, Richard, I was thinking of a phenomenon that happens in the Greek myths, and
Yes.
I was thinking that there's a sort of parallel that I can find in the Bible. And you've mentioned more than once that the great important stories are sort of told everywhere, again and
Mm-hmm.
again, not just the
Yes, I
Bible.
believe so. Right.
So I want to throw one to you
Mm-hmm.
and see what you think, because I can think of something similar in the Bible, and just wanted to see where your mind takes you.
Sure.
Um, in the Greek myths, a lot of times there are stories where ordinary humans have interacted with the Greek gods, but not as gods. The gods disguise themselves as humans, and so
Yes.
humans will take in travelers, thinking they're just travelers who need a place to sleep for the night, and will treat them well, make sure they're well fed and watered, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the gods will offer them a reward. Name your reward, and they will. And then the gods become incensed that they dared to ask for X, Y, Z, and then they're punished for it.
That does seem a recurring theme. I'm not sure I agree that the gods are incensed for exactly that reason, but go ahead.
mm. Okay, well, I can think of an example. There was a couple that was asked for, then name your reward. And so they asked for eternal life. And so the gods didn't like this. So they gave them eternal life without giving them youth. And gradually they aged and became more and more shrunken until they became grasshoppers. And that is apparently the origin of the grasshopper.
I
And
see.
there's,
I don't think that a grasshopper looks like an extremely old human, but okay, sure.
yes. Well, the now if you want, did you want me to prompt you with a story that I think is similar from the Old
Whatever you
Testament?
like.
Well, there was an incident, and I think I may have learned this first from you, about where a man went to battle, some such thing, and he asked for God's help in the battle, and there was a price extracted that the first living thing that greeted him on his return home would have to be
Hmm.
sacrificed.
Right.
And
That was his idea, not God's idea, but go ahead.
okay, that's good. So he comes home, and his beloved daughter, a toddler, comes out to greet him, and so he has to sacrifice her.
Yes.
And it strikes me as similar in tone. Oh, sorry, are you still there? I had a computer hiccup.
It's okay. Keep going.
At any rate, it struck me as being similar in tone, and Hillary's email says, by the way, great username, Japheth's daughter. So maybe it was Japheth who came home, and his little daughter came out to greet him.
I believe that's accurate, yeah.
So, what words is he saying? Greekness, Greek-like. The so long story short is that I can remember a couple of these very similar stories where humans are punished for hubris, and of course, hubris might be the one Greek word I know. There is another amazing one where I think it's Arachne was known to be the best weaver, of her generation, and she would do these amazing works of art. And she was praised as being better than the goddess herself who invented weaving.
Hmm.
And she didn't immediately dismiss it or defer it, she just took the praise. And so that God punished her by turning her into a spider.
Because
And
spiders weave. Yeah.
yes, yes. And hey, if you like to weave, you're going to love it now. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so
those
now
are, of
there's
course. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. What do you think of all this sort of trend in mythology?
I think they're very different cultures in the way that they look at things.
Mm,
But I think there is an overarching message there, that normally what we ask for is some pretty dumb things to ask for, and in fact the
mm,
wrong things to ask for. And I think that has everything to do. What I'm most reminded of actually is the story of Solomon. And Solomon asks for the thing that is blessed by God, asks for wisdom,
oh,
and in that wisdom, um, is able to do for himself. Um, Having wisdom tells you what you should look into, and when you look into it, how you should look at it. And it has everything to do with understanding reality. I think that what is reality naturally works, and what is not real, what is not true, naturally does not work. So it seems like these stories are about them asking for what they shouldn't ask, or thinking they need what they don't need.
mm, mm. Yes, so desiring what you should not, and um, is an important theme, I suppose.
Yes, and how it can lead to unhappiness and
Mm,
maladjustment and misery and persecution of others and judgment and expectation and disappointment and frustration and anger, which is just compounding. It just gets worse and worse.
mm. Well, I just did a little Googling,
Mm.
and apparently the tale of Ariadne is from Ovid, and um, it's weird. It has Ariadne challenging the goddess Athena, who is goddess of wisdom and crafts, to a weaving contest.
Hmm.
And when Arachne wins, the goddess becomes enraged and beats her with a weaving shuttle. And anyway, um, influence.
So that's an interesting twist.
Yes.
The human wins.
Yes. So, in a sense, her pride was justified. She really was the best, but still a mistake to challenge the gods.
I guess
Normally,
there's
when
somewhat of a
writing,
lesson in that.
yes, yes. Um, whereas writers, when they would um, do a piece, even ones who were atheists, would start their writing off with a tribute to the gods, or acknowledgement of the gods. It was sort of the customary thing to do. So even if you didn't believe in them, you said thank you to the gods for, blah 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 blah. At least that's how I remember it. I don't know that much about it.
I wouldn't know how to argue otherwise. I really don't know. Um, yeah,
I
it's a
don't know.
tradition in
Yes.
the in quilting to put something in the quilt that doesn't match. You ever heard of
Really?
this? Yes.
Oh, okay. Something that doesn't match. So something in
Mhm.
contrast.
Well, in the idea that you may as well purposefully put an imperfection in it.
Oh, okay. Because there's going to
So,
be some of them anyway, so you might as well.
no, that you can never make a perfect thing. That
Oh.
would be a thing of God.
Ah. Oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah, so it's basically the same idea you were just expressing, and
Hmm. There was also there are others who apparently have challenged the gods to things like music, and they get into trouble for it.
yeah, apparently. Uh,
You'd think they would stop doing that at some point.
well, you'd think the Jews would stop forgetting about God, right?
Yes,
You'd think they'd catch on that, you know.
maybe there's yeah, it's weird, you know. But otherwise we wouldn't have all these great stories. Deified mortals. No, that's not what I want. But anyway, I'm going to stop searching the Google machine and get back to the point of this conversation. Is there anything on your mind? It's not just me that has topics there, Richard. What's got you thinking these
Oh
days?
gosh. Um, I love and hate that question, and
Oh,
here's
okay.
why. Um, okay, this is going to sound pretentious. I don't know how to avoid it.
Go ahead.
The I've been at this for so long now and have spent so much time on it
Mm,
that the conversation that is, being discussed in logic and against what I perceive reality to be that goes
mm,
on in my mind on these topics is is horribly specific, uh, beyond what most people would consider worth talking about.
mm,
So, like, I'll tell you. Recently, I was watching someone's stream. They brought up Jacob, Israel, that he wrestles with the angel of God, and he wrestles with the angel of God, and he wins.
mm-hmm.
And why this is brought to mind is because what you were saying, of course. He
All
wrestles
right.
with God and he wins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the wrestling with God, the angel touches his hip, and the hollow of his thigh is disjointed.
Mm,
Okay. But he hangs in there, you know.
mm-hmm.
And finally, uh, they've wrestled so long, assuming it was daylight when they started, or it seems that it's daylight when they started. It's now the next morning. The morning is coming,
Mm,
and the angel compels Jacob, which the name Jacob means supplanter,
mm-hmm. Ah.
and to supplant means to overtake one that you should not be able to overtake.
Mm,
And he does it in his birthright, with the blessing of his father,
right.
and then he does it again with the angel. So seems no mistake. The high points of his life are his name,
Mm-hmm.
and then he has a change of name to Israel at that point, of course, because to be Israel is to wrestle with God. To be of the children of Israel is to be of the children that wrestle with God.
Right.
Okay, so I'm thinking about that,
Mm-hmm.
and it strikes me that it's using a pat phrase there. Um, the angel compels Jacob to let him go, and gives a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Because the day approaches. because the day approaches. Well, that's an odd way to say it now, isn't it?
Well, maybe the
Uh,
angel had to be somewhere else.
no, precisely.
Hmm.
The angel needs to be doing something else because the day approaches.
Yes.
So he's compelling Jacob to let go of him.
Hmm.
That is, Jacob is, hanging on for dear life. Maybe at some point in the psyche of Jacob, the angel becomes comforting. You know, that's the way it seems to me. So he's kind of hanging on to him. Not only has he won the wrestling match, but it's a comfort. He's holding an angel.
Yes. Does he?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Does it make it clear why they were wrestling in the first place?
Well, yes, because he's Jacob and he has to become Israel. That's why they're wrestling. I know that was not an answer. Um, I believe it is a what the Christians call a foreshadowing,
Hmm.
like many of the stories are. It's talking about the one who wins against the angel of God,
Okay.
the one who wrestles and wins. And there's only one, and he literally is Israel, and he is the father of the multitudes. He is those things. And that is to say, he's the hero of the story. He's an iteration of the typology Christ.
Mm.
That's what he is there. Um, so I haven't even gotten to the part that I think is deep about it,
Hmm.
although it may seem that I could have. I have not. Okay, so the day being a pat phrase throughout the text refers to, well, the great day of the Lord, uh, i.e., what the Christians commonly call end times. The Bible calls it the great day of the Lord, but Christians call it end times normally. Um, and if that is what it's referring to, then all of that makes sense if the angel is a participant in the conducting of end times.
Hmm.
So what does it mean? Release me for the day comes. Well, it means that it means that the Jacob, the Israel in this story has been wrestling with God and has won and has become dependent upon, which, if you think of it, the Christ speaks about in further text, talking about how he has been the Holy Spirit to the apostles and how he must leave that the Holy Spirit can be experienced by them individually. He has to stop playing that part at some point of their growth.
Hmm.
So there you go. I think it's talking about Jesus becoming dependent on the Father, his representation of God, his experience of God, so much so for so long that as end times approaches, it's actually the Father or God who has to say to him, "You have to let go of me." What do you
Hmm.
think?
Well, I'm digging it. Um, I really find it interesting that this sort of wrestling with God or the angel and symbolic of Israel's struggle
Yes.
often. Um, how many times? I wonder if anyone's ever actually counted the number of times in which God becomes angry at Israel because they didn't do this or they did that. There's something in here about um, Jacob failing to tithe and then this
Yeah.
event happening. But I'm not so sure that's true.
Well, there's lots of conjecture. The
Mm,
idea of Jacob tithing or not is
mm,
literally, it's not part of the story. They've taken parts and woven them together because they don't see a separation in topic, which is often the case. In fact, when translators were trying to work through the Torah, Nevi'im, the prophets, and into the New Testament, they arbitrarily broke it into chapters and verses, and it's obvious at times that the verse is broken in half, and it's all one idea. And there's times that they didn't break it when they should. There's times they shouldn't have broke it and did.
Right.
So, yeah, so that happens a lot. And how they came up with those interruptions, I think, was because of their presuppositions about how to think about it. That is their tradition within their church, is how they decided that. Peace and respect, Isa Muhammad.
Oh, look at all these chats. Here we go.
Yeah, chats will happen sometimes.
Okay,
so definitionally, and that's just one thought. That's something that recently happened in my prayer life.
Yes.
But going on from the word Israel, a lot of people take it to be, the Jewish people. That's what the children of Israel means. But again, that's neglecting the overall idea of Jacob and the wrestling with the angel of God. That effectively he's wrestling with God, and that is what makes a person Israel. So I'd say if you were born Baptist and you became let's say 14 years old, which is probably about an average, 14 to 17 years old, you became agnostic or atheistic, and then life went on and you saw things that logic demanded of you, that science didn't explain in a material way, could not address. You had personal experiences that it seems that nothing but some kind of intelligent being outside of this earth could begin to explain your experience, then indeed you are wrestling with God. That's what you're doing there. So I don't think the story is intended to be read as Jewish folks. But it's intended to be read with those who read as those who wrestle with God. That we're trying to make sense of reality and trying to see what's the best explanation for things. And for some part of it, whether a person wants to reject the idea of God or not, it's certainly something we all wrestle with.
Yes, I've often thought when I was religious that souls are either struggling to reach God or struggling to get away from Him. But
I suppose that's how you look at it, isn't it?
Well, I'm afraid that's how I did. I don't know how profound a thought that is, but it seemed to me at the time. Now that I'm not religious, I don't know what to make of that notion at all, other than,
well, I have some ideas on it.
Far away.
I mean, it's philosophical. It's not empirical. Say it all again, if you would.
That souls are either struggling to become closer to their God or struggling to get away from it.
I believe that's actually the same thing. The realization of God is true freedom and independence. So in order to reach that state, one has to accept the truth of the universe. Kind of a Tao idea. And upon acceptance of the actuality, which when you're accepting actuality, you're very dependent. But the eventuality of that is once it's accepted, you're very independent. If that makes any sense to you?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, also understanding and accepting one's circumstances can be kind of liberating in itself.
Sure.
Also, like struggling against, for example, if you're very short, struggling against it, wishing you were tall all the time, is pointless.
Yes.
Hmm. The um, but so at any rate, I don't know where that takes me. I
Doesn't need to go anywhere. It can be just what it is.
Yes, I remember with Buddhism there is this sort of notion that all life involves suffering, and when you stop struggling to escape it, just accept it, then you are relieved from some of your pain.
I think that's true. I mean, when you can break that down to like a microbiological chemical reaction level.
Mm.
You know that it's literal suffering. Like our cells need oxygen, but oxygenization is rust.
Hmm.
Something like that. It's keeping us alive and killing us simultaneously.
Yes, I agree.
Something like that.
Technically, your metabolism is this and that, and you only
Yeah,
have so many heartbeats before your heart gives out. So
yeah,
life necessitates death. That sort of
right.
thing. I was wondering, this is apropos of nothing, but you know how Jesus dies and then 3 days later reemerges? And then you
Yes.
have the story of Jonah and the great fish. And,
Good job.
pardon me?
Good job.
Well, again, it's 3 days. And
Yeah, that's no accident.
no, and I'm just sort of wondering what you make of it. It's kind of a curious story. Um,
It,
in this case, I think it's Jonah. God wanted Jonah to go to a city and preach against it, against their evil ways or something.
yes, of course.
And so he's swallowed by a fish and then delivered there.
Yeah, that's generally it. Let's go over some details.
Mm,
Jonah is in the bosom of God at the beginning of the story.
he is.
Yeah, peace and respect, Commander 401. Yeah, the story starts out with Jonah being in perfect harmony, contained by God, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. It reads, I mean, it's a decent translation, in the bosom of God or in the pocket of God, something like that. Um, so, like wrapped up and swaddled, things like ideas like that, fully immersed.
Mm,
So, he gets into, he's sent on a mission, which he agrees to, by the way,
okay.
to go and testify to that great city. Biblically, that great city, meaning the separated and walled city, the walled garden. That is to say, Eden. That is to say, this planet. That great city.
Mm,
Um, and yes, there's a wall around this garden. We call it the zodiac. And anyway, all the description works quite well.
mm,
I won't bore you with a lot of detail there. That he goes and testifies to that great city. Well, why? Because the city it's bankrupt morally, the way they think about things, their lack of acceptance of truth. They're just a mess.
mm,
So he agrees. Immediately, he finds himself in a vessel. Okay, and Christians will normally take vessel to mean a boat. And you can use the word vessel that way, but it's inconsistent in the text. Um, to take the word vessel that where the vessel means your flesh, means your physical body, including your brain, the brain mass itself. That's a vessel. So he finds himself immediately in a vessel, and he is in the bottom of a vessel, and he is asleep. And there's this crazy storm, and he's asleep. That shouldn't be. Like, how are you sleeping through this crazy, nasty storm on the waters?
Yes.
Right? The crew do what they can. They can't figure out what to do. They call on the captain. The captain settles the issue. He casts lots, which means, essentially doing the best he can in his best guess, something like that. But it's somewhat up to chance. And discerns that it is Jonah's fault that they are in such trouble.
Right.
Yeah, this means that in the delivery room, when the vessel mom was ready to give birth and the body was ready to give birth and all the right hormones were there, that he had lost consciousness, like he got choked out. Which is referred to later in the story as well. He's choked out. He's like a blue baby, right? And they have to figure out what's going wrong. That's what doctors and nurses and stuff do. They figure out that it's the baby's fault, so they force the baby out. They force the baby out of the vessel. So there you go. He's now out in the waters. That meaning a large group of beings. No longer inside one being. He's now in a large group of beings. And that, of course, in a consistent reading frame, is the populace of the planet. And, of course, he's out in the populace of the planet. And is thereby immersed in water. That is to say, baptized.
Okay.
Right. Because that's what baptism is immersion in water. And why it has to be immersion in water. And why one must be baptized for sin. Because you wouldn't have sin without baptism. That wouldn't even make any sense. So there's a tumult on the waters, a great storm, right? That means the people are troubled. The people are upset, etc. And that carries through the rest of the stories with, Jesus walking on the water, and there's a great tumult on the water, and he calms the waters and these things. And Jonah goes to that great city, and well, you probably know a lot of the details of the story right there. He does it. He doesn't do it. He thinks they deserve it. He thinks they don't deserve it. God shelters him. God takes away the shelter. All this stuff goes back and forth. That's a pretty thorough description of the life and times and the time of the testimony of Jesus Christ. That is to say, it's no coincidence that he is all but dead in the belly of this great fish, and the reeds are wrapped around his neck, and he's choked out, and he comes very, very close to death.
Right.
Well, of course, if it's a story about Jesus, that's talking about Jesus's time between the death on the crucifixion and his resurrection back to life, his quote unquote time in hell, as it were. Which shouldn't be translated hell, actually. It should probably be translated as Sheol, because he's not in the hell, he's in death.
Yes, not necessarily punishment.
Right. And Jesus is the exception to the overall rule: the dead know no things, the dead know nothing. He would be the exception of that, which would mean that he would be the first occurrence on this earth of a person who died and didn't lose their consciousness. If you can even imagine what the heck that means. For me, it's kind of tough to imagine.
Yeah. It seems to me also that I've heard more than once of people being given a mission by God and then not wanting to do it. I think Muhammad was the same way.
No, that's always the case.
Mm.
It's part of the. I always forget the literary term for the story of the hero, and that bugs me. And you'd think by now I'd remember it, but I always get a little bit nervous, and my brain goes, "Nope, you can't retrieve that right now. Sorry."
Okay, well,
404 error.
was it
What's
a
that?
Joseph Campbell thing?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Well, Joseph Campbell became sort of popularly known because he wrote about the hero's journey.
the
And
hero's journey. Yes.
the hero's journey, yeah, that's the name of the book. And a hero ventures forth from the world of the common day into a reign of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are encountered there, and a decisive victory is won. And he comes home changed or transformed.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
And he brings snacks.
No, no snacks. Sorry.
I like snack food. What can I tell you?
Yeah, a lot of us do. It's fine. Um, yeah, but the Epic of the Hero snacks, not really part of it, not literal snacks, anyway.
No, probably not.
There's spiritual. There's always spiritual snacks. There is. That's always part of the story.
I'm glad to hear it.
The people always get to a point of, and this Pandora's box, the people always trudge along in faith, and then when their faith is dashed to pieces by the revelation of the monster, they realize they never had hope. And that hope is that which is preserved in that very valuable chest, to be released at the end of our time, at the end of the eon, if you will.
Funny, speaking of the end of eons, Hillary's emails mentions that Christ said he went to preach to the sleepers in Sheol, and I'm wondering if that's the same thing as the harrowing of hell, that where it said that Jesus went to hell and then to heaven.
Well, yeah, the word Sheol, as I said, and Hillary's email, I agree, is correct. It should be translated Sheol, not hell.
But
you know how the English are. The English are super lazy. They want to find the easiest way to say everything. So it does cause problems, though, because with the removal of the great oceans, the great river Euphrates, comes the crust melting like wax and mountains melting and all that, and you literally would have a lake of fire for a really, really long time. How long will it take for the Earth to cool off with no oceans? Well, it's the oceans keeping it cool. Take the oceans off and find out. So you end up with a lake of fire, and then it says that there will be people who perish in the lake of fire, and that the lake of fire will burn forever and ever. And here's what Christians did with that. You can survive a lava flow. I don't know how. Far as I know, our flesh can't stand, say, anything over like 150 degrees for any length of time, and that's even if it was just convection. Never mind conduction. If it touches you,
it's good luck to you.
I don't know what's lava's average temperature. Something liquid rock can be hotter than, but must be at least as hot as something like 1800 degrees. Yeah, you're not going to do well against that. If it touches you, it's going to, immediately dissolve your flesh. It's going to burn you. You're not going to do well. The water in your cells would individually boil and burst, and burst cells don't do well. They tend to die right away. Yeah.
There's a terrible thing when people fall into lava or are thrown in. They will momentarily sink because of the force of the impact, but they rise to the surface right away because they're not as dense as liquid rock.
Not
and
even
you
close.
end up sort of boiling away there.
Right, the fry on top.
Yes.
Yep,
That's
because
which is
rock's
a
heavy.
really nasty way to go.
No doubt. No doubt. And here's one of those thoughts that I think are necessary from understanding the text in the way that I do, which Christians never talk about. They never get to this kind of a thought. They never get to this event. Logical progression will lead you forward if you follow it, but you have to follow it. That the lake of fire and those that suffer that does not speak, because it's been assumed in Christianity that because it's associated to hell that that's their permanent situation, that they'll Harple says stick a fork in it. When it floats, it's done. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was distracting. I need to not read side chat. Not your fault, guys. I just need to not delve into your minds while I'm trying to keep mine straight. That those who suffer that, it doesn't speak to their damnation, not at all. Not in any way does it speak to their damnation. But they are being physically destroyed. Of course, how big of a deal is that? Well, in an internal critique of the text, life can be restored in heaven. So what you lost was, 5,000 pounds of onions, 10,000 pounds of chicken. That's what you lost, when a person dies. But all those resources readily available, it's just not a big deal that somebody isn't physically alive. They can be restored. Just a matter of resources and time and the right genetics, apparently, and restoration of their self, their memory, their experiences, which are apparently being downloaded into some mainframe, whether the mainframe is angels or computers, and I don't know which one it is, but they claim to be able to fully restore a person. That means the person that is them, not just their flesh. So I expect that at some point after my mom is reborn into heaven, yes, born again, that they will restore mom to her, and she'll understand who she was to all of us and her relationships on the earth, which will be an interesting thing at perhaps 7 or 9 years old, that restored to her, and start calling a 9-year-old mom. So that'd be kind of odd, but it doesn't speak to their eternal souls situation, that their flesh got burnt up. It's just not addressed there. So Christians will conflate the lake of fire with hell, and then being in the lake of the fire, being in hell, means that you are permanently separated from God, which means you're damned.
Yes.
90% of that was assumption. But indeed, what is a more thorough and consistent reading has them getting a extremely traumatic experience. And I don't know what you know about traumatic experiences experienced by human beings. It tends to be a mental reset. If something is horrific enough, what you lose is some amount of memory before that and the memory of that. That's what you lose. And that's just evidently true. Our brain will go, nope, can't accept that. And it becomes a non-thing. So I think that's what's being done is those who hold out long enough that the earth is literally falling apart around them, which means that they saw the announcing miracles, they saw the arrival of heaven, they saw the arrival of Satan's habitation and or hell, they watched the war in the heavens, I'm sorry, I did it out of order. They met angels, they were judged, they were given the opportunity to ascend or not, totally up to them. Those who stayed behind were stung by what are essentially highly advanced mechanical drones. They're in constant pain for 5 months. During those 5 months, they're watching the war in the heavens. That is, pew, pew, pew. Essentially, Star Wars, right there, probably amongst the asteroid belts between Mars and Jupiter. Um, and that's where that war happens. Why? Because that's the best place around here for a war of that scale and with those kind of craft. Um, and then the return of heaven, the crash, they saw hell crash to the earth. And then they go through the 7 plagues of end times, and they're still going, nope, I don't buy it. Well, you're a special kind of crazy if after all that you can say, nope, I don't buy it. Well, maybe what you need is a reset. Because you're not accepting the reality at hand, that's for sure. So I'm not sure how cruel it is to give someone like that a reset. After all, they're not going to remember it. It's just too damned horrific.
Man. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah, they would be literally gnawing their tongues off in pain.
Yes.
And gnashing their teeth, breaking their teeth because of jaw pressure. That's what gnashing your teeth means. Not just, it doesn't mean just rubbing them together.
Ah, okay. Well, there used to be a torture technique where it would be a metal device that would hold your head in place while compressing your head so that your jaws would be pushed together.
Right.
Until your teeth and jaw completely broke apart.
Yep, that'd be torturous.
It sure would.
Yeah.
Lordy. Yeah, not good. I'm glad I've never had that happen.
Yeah, me too. But the flesh restored to them, their old flesh thoroughly destroyed by, well, magma, hot burning magma. I think it would be very, very effective as a reset button so that they can get a chance to accept the actuality at hand. So it's like a last ditch effort. We're going to give you literally thousands upon thousands of proofs over the course of 7 years. And by the way, if that don't work for you, we'll do this.
But at the end of that burning, they would be restored to a new body.
Well, the flesh would be completely destroyed. That person physically would not exist. I mean, thoroughly cooked, broke down to minerals, I'm sure, and water vapor and the like. All of the gases from their body thoroughly released. Because as you guys were pointing out, it can't even be trapped within the magma, because the magma is so much more dense that they just floated on top till there was nothing. I mean, a little bit of carbon left floating on top, and maybe a little bit of smattering of minerals. That's it. They're gone.
This is a really upbeat sort of show.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't want to paint it all as as unicorns farting rainbows. It's not. Like it's serious stuff. On the flip side of that same coin, I'm not trying to scare someone into submission, but I can't lie to them and say this is not so. This is what the story says, as best as I can understand it. This is what it reads. On the Math Pig show, Math Pig always contends that I'm saying the ends justifies the means, and the means is unjust, and the means is immoral. And I'm saying that something that is immoral can be justified if the gain is great enough, if the end result is great enough. And you can call me a horrible human being. That's fine. Yes, I agree. I think that absolutely horrific things can be justified if the outcome is great enough and beneficial enough. So So, I mean, to me, at some point, it's not purely a numbers game, but eventually it's a numbers game.
Mm.
So, like, let's say, just for argument's sake, Steve, let's just say, what if heaven were real?
Okay.
And what if being in heaven meant being in a society of human beings, traveling throughout the galaxies, terraforming an Earth every now and then, so that there could be another batch of genetically restricted angels on that, and that they would suffer. Going forth in the universe, promoting love and justice, living forever in a utopian society of human beings, which were self-maintaining. They took care of themselves. They were not leeches on any other species or anything else. In fact, they are possibly giving asylum and protection to some other species from other places in the universe. And I can show that in the story of the Bible, that they indeed do that very thing. And entertaining political people of political position from those other species of what I have to call alien beings, non-humans.
Mm.
Well, is that worth the possibility of that? Does it have some intrinsic mean value? Well, gosh, isn't that what we're all trying to? Isn't that what science is trying to do right now? Is make us able to live forever, traveling through space in a utopian society? All of our money goes toward this. It's evidently true that we agree this is worth doing. Well, what if we could trade all the money and all of the effort of all the scientists ever for 7 years of, would the 7 years have been easier?
Mm.
I think yes. The 7 years was shorter. It was easier. Less people die. The ultimate goal is achieved. I just don't have a problem with it.
Mm.
You're becoming exhausted. I can tell it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just winding down.
That's
I'm
okay.
being a good guest.
No
But
need to apologize at all. A
sorry,
wizard is precisely what that wizard should be.
he
What's
doesn't
that?
play with. We're missing Mac. He doesn't become worn out so easily.
It's been an hour,
It has.
roughly. Yes, it has.
Okay, then I will use that as the excuse I need to roll over and fall asleep.
That's lovely. Do
But
exactly that.
it's been real, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Okay, I will say good night, even though it's still early afternoon.
Have peace.
Bye.
All right, guys. I'll devote a few minutes if you want to stick something in the side chat real quick. Let's see. Hillary's email wrote and tagged me, and thank you for tagging me because it makes things obvious when you're trying to interact with me directly and not someone else in the chat. Hey, Flow State. Peace and respect. Didn't see you before. A black hole is like a lake of fire, and time stops at the event horizon, so it's eternal to an outside observer. That's very interesting. I don't know much about black hole theory. It's entirely possible that everything you just said is completely coherent within the most recent ideas in theoretical astrophysics. I would not know. Peace and respect, Logan Fisher. I just saw you here. All right, guys. If you wanna throw something in the side chat real quick, I'll give you a minute or two to do that. Flow State, you have a very odd idea of what sexy means. If it includes me, I don't understand that. Blink of an eye subjectively to the person. Yes, blink of an eye is subjective to the person. That is to say, like when we go to sleep, which is why the dead are referred to as sleeping with the fathers, etc. It's a sleep-like state. Well, what do I experience when I'm sleeping? Well, other than the dream portion, which is a very small portion apparently, what I experience in sleep is nothing. I experience a whole bunch of nothing. Time doesn't go by. Wood doesn't rot. Nothing. Just a whole bunch of nothing going on there. And in the text of the Bible, and I agree this is evidently true in reality, that my sister is not in a grave. My sister is gone. She's not there at all. The body that my sister inhabited, that's in a grave and just decomposing. Not getting any prettier. That's in a grave. My sister is not in that grave. My sister is not the thing in the grave. Okay? The dead know nothing. Well, that seems evidently true. If you don't have a brain mass that's, functional, then you can't know things, because knowing things is, memories in the brain. So you don't know things while you're dead. That seems to be reasonable in my experience. I've seen a lot of dead stuff. None of it seemed to know that I had interacted with it, for instance, or that it was stiff as a board, frozen to the field, stuck to the grass. Didn't seem to know that either. Didn't seem to be worried about it. Didn't seem to know anything at all. Thanks for liking the video, guys. I wouldn't even bring this up, except I think what I'm saying, if it's true in the future, is highly valuable. So I should bring it up. If you think I'm absolutely wrong, that's fine. And I could be. I could be reading this completely upside down, colloquially speaking. But there is this possibility that it's right. So let's say, just for argument's sake, that it were right, that this is the right way to look at it, that religion is just causing to be superstitious an account of ancient human aliens arriving to the planet and inviting us to be part of their already established community, having extreme technology, being able to cross entire galaxies with apparently no problem. There could be those out there in YouTube land that need to hear this, that it might open their mind and bring them out of what is essentially a cult, the cult of Christianity, where the Christianity is the religion. And the highest thing in the religion is the Christianity. It's the dogma. It's the church. So much so that churches will ignore parts of the Bible, even claiming to be whole Bible churches. They're not. They're really, really not. And God is certainly not the highest thing in their mind. No, the church is the highest thing. The church is their God, and that makes it a cult. And it happens way too frequently. So perhaps, even if you don't value what I'm saying and you doubt its ability to comport with reality, if you would like and subscribe to this, maybe recommend it to someone whom you think is possibly in a cult, that they are being taken advantage of in not so nice ways. That these kinds of talks might help them get out of that, and perhaps you have done them a service. So I think that's a real possibility, and I'd appreciate it if you helped with that. All right, guys, you guys wrote nothing more in there and tagged me, so I thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me for this. I hope I'm saying something that matters later. Of course, I cannot prove that. Peace and respect to you all. I want you all to know that I very much look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Until next time.